Okay, so we should be recording and I am now screen sharing, so I'm going to go ahead and start the game. Okay, so the question is, terror management theory proposes that prejudice against different groups results from either uncertainty, concerns about mortality, intergroup anxiety, or competition over scarce resources. So terror management theory is concerns about mortality. This morning, this question was gotten wrong as well. So it's just basically a memorization question. So I think of terror of death, that's terror management theory. You're managing your terror of death by making decisions relating to prejudice related to like in-group, out-group type of things. So just think about terror management as concerns about mortality. Perfect. Okay, so the question is, implicit prejudice occurs when people consciously hold negative attitudes associated with an outgroup, people unconsciously hold negative attitudes associated with an outgroup, conscious attitudes are activated, or groups discriminate against each other. So implicit bias or implicit prejudice is unconscious, and explicit bias or explicit prejudice is conscious. So that's also basically a memorization. But implicit prejudice is like, it could be like you were showing a racial bias, but you really didn't mean to, and that wasn't your core value. But maybe if you were like an employer looking at resumes and maybe you were giving interviews to people more with white sounding names than black sounding names, then you could be exhibiting implicit bias and not even realizing it. There is an experiment exactly like that. It's very interesting and that did occur. Um, so that's just something to think about, but if it's implicit, it means it's unconscious. Okay, so this is a hard question. You put C, correct? Free riders.
Yes.
So social loafers and free riders will not be distinguished on this test. But people who take more than their fair share of common resources are doing social loafing. This would also occur like on a group project if there's always somebody who basically didn't do any work. That's social loafing. The bigger the group is, the more social loafing there will be, because you might even be doing it like accidentally or maybe on purpose. But yeah, social loafing is, you're the person that's not doing as much as others. And the larger the group is, the more often it occurs. That's why you wouldn't want a group project with like 10 people. That would be a nightmare. And that's why I don't do group projects. Plus, I think they can be awkward. Yes. So de-individuation is losing your sense of self in a group. Um, this is, you could be at a concert and doing whatever everybody else is doing. You could be in all types of things, but you feel like you're one of the crowd. Maybe you're doing an unusual behavior. Unfortunately, this happens at concerts where like people got like trampled on or whatever, like at the Astro World concert a few years ago. People are like losing their individual identity. So I just think de-individuation, losing your individual identity because you're like in a crowd. Okay. Sorry, I was looking for something. I will explain. So it says in blank, men are highly motivated to protect their status and reputation. And the answers were culture of honor in the United States, uh, collectivist cultures or countries that produce a lot of violent media. So culture of honor is where men want to protect their honor. Like they might have a firearm, if somebody like intrudes in their home. This occurs in the American South a lot, like um if somebody was verbally aggressive, you might be physically aggressive, like a bar fight. Like I'm gonna protect my property. I'm gonna defend my rights. I'm gonna protect my wife. Um, that type of thing. I was looking behind me because I did some field research somewhat recently where I gave people culture of honor surveys, and I thought it would be fun to show some example questions, but I was just rifling around in papers. It's here somewhere. It's probably on the test, but culture of honor is like culture of manhood and protecting your rights and more seen in the American South and associated with um a bit violent behavior to some extent. Like if you were like in like Seattle, if there's like a home invader, you'll be less likely to defend your rights with a firearm than if it were, the American South. But that's a culture of honor. It's really interesting stuff. Okay, so the question is Carla is a very accomplished violin player. Having an audience watch her play is more likely to enhance her performance, impair her performance, not affect her performance, or impair her performance if the audience is large. So she's a good violin player, so an audience would actually probably enhance her performance, and that's based on social facilitation theory. Social facilitation is a theory that says if you're doing an easy task or a task that you're good at, if there's a crowd, you will actually perform better. But if it's something you're like bad at or really hard, if there's a crowd, like of course you will do worse. I think the surprising thing about that is that your performance will be enhanced if you're good at something or it's easy for you if there's a crowd. In the lecture, I talk about this experiment. I think I started laughing in the lecture. It's an experiment about cockroaches, and there's like a cockroach amphitheater, and they have the cockroaches go through like an easy maze, and they do well when there's like a lot of cockroaches in the amphitheater. And then they have the cockroaches go through like a hard maze, and like they did worse with the audience. I don't know. It's really goofy. I really like it, but long story short, make sure you know social facilitation theory is probably on the test. Okay. So this is a long question. It's about the implicit association test, which I pulled up a tab where I can show what it looks like in a minute here. But it says on a racial attitude implicit association test or an IAT test, Logan responds faster when positive words are paired with images of white people and negative words are paired with images of Black people, and slower to pair negative words with pictures of white people and positive words with pictures of Black people. Assuming the IAT is a valid measure of implicit racial attitudes, how would we interpret the results? Which it's basically, are they implicitly preferring white people, or are they implicitly preferring Black people? Um, so let me show a picture. So this is a picture of the IAT. This one, it looks like it's about like medical patients, but you see a picture of a white person or a Black person. There's other IATs, all types of IATs with different populations. Um, but you'll be instructed like your fingers are on the I and the E keys on your keyboard, and you're supposed to pair, like in this case, they're saying um you're pairing, like if you see a Black person, you're supposed to pair it with like a negative word. Like if this said it's like Black person or bad, you pair like the word, or white person or good. So like here where you see on the top right where it says Black patient or bad, white patient or good, where you see the word pleasure, you're supposed to press the key to pair it with like white patient good. Like you're supposed to press it to pair it with the right side of the screen, and then it'll flip it and it'll say like Black patient or good and white patient or bad, and it sees how fast you are at pairing things that way. And so it's a reaction time task, and it's kind of hard to explain until you see it. But if you pair positive qualities with white people more quickly than you do with Black people, or if you pair negative qualities with Black people more quickly than you pair negative qualities with white people, then you're implicitly preferring the one where you're pairing the positive qualities with more quickly. I don't remember if the IAT is on the test, but all you really need to know is the reaction time. If you have a faster reaction time towards positive things about one group, that's a group you prefer. Like if you see like, well, I think I explained it like 12 times, but I don't think it would be presented on the test in this much detail, but it is an interesting test. It is getting some criticism for validity lately, though. Um, I do kind of know the guy who made it, and it's been kind of an open debate, but it is an interesting test. Okay, so this is a difficult question. The question is, a behavior is not aggressive if it is unintentional, verbal, instrumental, or subtle. So first we can rule out verbal aggression. You can be verbally aggressive, like if you yell at somebody, that would be verbal aggression. Subtle aggression, that's not really a real term. Um, the answer is a behavior is not aggressive if it's unintentional. Like if it's fully unintentional, like you said something and you literally didn't know what it meant, or like I don't know, if you did something where it would seem aggressive but you really didn't mean to, then that would not be aggressive. Instrumental aggression is when you are aggressive but only as a means to an end, and I think probably the best example of that would be in sports. Like if you tackle somebody in football, that actually is considered to be aggressive behavior, but it's considered to be instrumental because you don't really just want to like tackle them for no reason. The only reason that you're tackling them is so that like you can get points or whatever. Um, if you accidentally like fell over and broke their leg or something, that would not be aggressive. That would be unintentional. So instrumental is you did it, whether it be in sports or another context, only to get a reward. Another example would be like if you like, what if your grandparents were going to give you a huge inheritance? So like you killed them so you would get the money. That would be instrumental aggression because the only you didn't if you really didn't kill them to lash out, if you only killed them to get the money, that would actually be instrumental aggression. So it can have a wide range. It's definitely on the test. Okay, great job. So the question is the weapon's effect is either the tendency for people to be more inclined to use weapons to aggress when they're frustrated. That is not the weapon's effect. Of course, people would be more likely to use a weapon if they were frustrated, but that's not the weapon's effect. That's also really obvious. Um, is a phenomenon only observed in the United States? No. Has not been empirically tested? No. But what it is a tendency for the presence of firearms to up the odds of aggression, especially when people are mad. So it doesn't mean you're going to shoot somebody, but there's an experiment like a really long time ago. I don't know, like the 70s or something. And in a lab, they had like the research assistant like provoke the participant and um in like one condition in the experimental condition there was like also a gun laying around in the lab. I probably should look up more details about exactly when this was, but it's really interesting. We obviously cannot do that now. I don't know if it was a real gun or a fake gun. It might have been a real gun. Anyways, but when the gun was around, people were more aggressive towards the research assistant when they got provoked. So that is the weapon's effect. It's like when you see the weapon, it doesn't really like make you want to like kill somebody, but it primes you to think about that, and that could make you just more aggressive in general. Okay, perfect. So the question is, Mike does not want his wife to watch a particularly violent movie because he thinks women are too pure for that type of material. This is an example of benevolent sexism. Hostile sexism is like you think women are like stupid or catty or I don't know. You literally just think something negative about women. Benevolent sexism means like you think they're like too pure or like too weak. Like, I feel like like if a man thought a woman shouldn't like doesn't need to carry something that only weighs like 10 pounds, or I don't know, like stuff like maybe like, oh, a woman doesn't need to do her taxes. She's too busy being like an exceptionally good mother. You know, like it's like you're discriminating, but it's because you think there's something like it's not because you think there's something negative about the woman. You might actually think there's something positive about the woman. But yeah, basically, you don't think women are like stupid, but you think like they're too pure or they need help with something that they don't actually need help with. I think that would be one of the most common ways. But that's what benevolent sexism is. Ambivalent sexism is not covered on the test. It's a little bit of a confusing concept. See. See the overall leader. So I'm gonna stop my share and I'm going to go over some other important concepts for the test. Okay, let me look at my notes here. I'm kind of trying to observe what are some, looking at the review packet. Um, yeah, the just world phenomenon, that's like karma, like a things happen for a reason, karma type of thing. Make sure you know stereotype threat. Stereotype threat is like um if you activate a stereotype, like let's say a teacher kind of hints at like that like boys are better at math or something like that, then when the girls and the boys take a math test together, it could cause like the girls to be like nervous and actually do worse even though that wasn't really true. um so basically, like if you activate a negative stereotype about a group before, like if you've got two or more groups and you put out a stereotype about one of them being better, and then you have them do something like take a test or give a speech or I don't know, something like that. If you activated the stereotype that one was worse, if the two groups are equal, the group who you activated the stereotype about could actually do worse. However, this is being hotly debated right now, but that is the theory of stereotype threat. Let's see. Hmm. Illusory correlations, I think we have talked about this in the past, but illusory correlations can occur when like two really intense things occur. You could think that they were related when it could just be like random. Like I don't know, like if there was a plane crash in your town and then there was like a train derailment in your town, you could somehow get the idea that there is like an illusory correlation between them when they were actually just random separate events. So kind of distinctive events can cause an illusory correlation. Um, Groups. So defining a group is an interesting concept to me, but a group is two or more people who are interacting or in some kind of way. Um, so a group, it could be just two people. Um, but if like you're at Target, you're not really like in a group with everybody at Target. Um, you're only in a group if you're interacting with the other people. Um, I guess if you're like talking to the cashier, now you and the cashier are in a little group. But if you're just like in a building or something, that is not a group. Um, hmm. I think those are the main things, besides what we covered on the Nearpod. Um, whenever I guess keep in mind that whenever things get really like when we're talking about big crowds, when we're talking about group dynamics, that's when you could have like de-individuation. That's when you could have like behavioral sync or problematic behaviors because nobody's like, it's not only that nobody's taking accountability, but it's just something that we even see in like um rats and mice and stuff like that. It kind of goes back to a lot of primal times, but that can lead to behavioral sync and de-individuations. Crowds can have a lot of problems at times. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna stop recording and then ask the student on here if they have any other questions.